Dear friends from FAUBAI, I just can't believe that a year ago I had the privilege of joining you at the annual meeting in Brazil. And of course, none of us would imagine a year ago that we will be in such a completely different situation now. And more important, I think all of us wonder what is going to be the future, in which way higher education, and more specifically, international higher education, is going to be affected by this completely unexpected situation. So, all of us, I'm sure, that are thinking constantly about what are the significant challenges and also what are the key opportunities that this unexpected crisis will bring to the field of international education. So I'd like to share with you some of the thinking that I had been participating at. First of all, it is important that what we have seen in terms of a closing of universities and colleges all over the world, it is just something that it never happened before. Now we are talking about more than 200 million students globally, which are not going to regular schools, regular colleges and universities. And also we know that approximately about 70% of all international students have returned to their home, to their countries of origin, but still that there are about 30% of those students which are in different countries, many of them facing very complicated situations. Also, we know that this significant transition of teaching from the face-to-face traditional way to online remote delivery of education has been able to happen relatively smoothly, I might say, but still recent numbers show that only 60% of the delivery has been able to be transitioned to a remote, which means that about 40% of students, both local and international students, are not being able to continue the traditional pace of education. Again, completely unexpected challenges that the world is facing and that we never knew about that before. So, what are some of the challenges? Well, the first one, of course, in the very short term, is that all colleges and universities should figure out a way on how to minimize the deficit of learning that is happening due to the transition from the regular teaching to the online teaching. Secondly, how to minimize the inequality, which is due to the technological divide, to the technological gap. Third, how do they can keep the interest of the students even in these new ways of teaching? How to guarantee the integrity in terms of the assessment of learning of students? And then, of course, institutions are challenged today to think about how to minimize the significant financial implications that the current and the future economic contraction is going to bring to all higher education. And of course, for us in the international higher education, what do we see? Well, I think it is evident that it will be unrealistic to assume that the new normal will be back to business as usual. Um, I think there is a significant risk that as higher education institutions will have to face a significant contraction in terms of economic viability. There is a significant risk that areas such as international education may be in jeopardy, that areas of international education may be seen as not as a central to the core mission of institutions as other areas in the academic sector. It is possible that in some institutions, decisions will be aimed at either reducing, if not eliminating, significant functions of the international education offices. And of course, that would be a significant mistake. but also is a crude reality, I might say. If we see that economic contraction will be affecting higher education and that significant number of students may not come back to the institutions, and that international students most likely will not come to our institutions. In fact, we are expecting that at least the next semester will be a zero international students or zero mobility academic programs. And also the fact that institutions still eventually might be facing the need to do remote teaching. So, of course, priorities in higher education institutions may be devoted to other areas that, again, for which international education is not being seen as central. However, at the same time, this is a time not to give up. This is a time to make the case that international education is central for a more relevant higher education, that international education is part of the core activities of our higher education institutions, and that if institutions reduce the capacity on that, of course, all the experience accumulated, all the knowledge, all the know-how that institutions have today in international education, that it has been a painful process of learning for higher education institutions in Latin America and in Brazil, of course, is going to be lost. So I think nobody will make the case for us. Don't wait for your boss to speak about how important is your job. International educators should become activists of international education on behalf of international education. You have to speak on behalf of the international spirit of our institutions. You have to speak to whoever you need to in making the case why international education is important. And also, there are significant opportunities that can be explored. Institutions now can do more on internationalization at home as a way to benefit many more students than the traditional mobility based programs. Institutions can work on virtual mobility, they can work on zero semester abroad, they can work on micro campus initiatives, they can put mirror teaching. They can, of course, do more in engaging in collaborative research with peers abroad. Institutions can have an opportunity to review all the many alliances they have and then to be much more strategic in defining which ones are important. And I will say the most significant opportunity, this is the time in which institutions can do more in redesigning our academic programs, in taking this as an opportunity to question how much of our academic model, the traditional model we have, makes sense today, makes sense for tomorrow, makes sense with all these situations that we are facing, and why not taking the opportunity to make the case with the institution that we need to make sure that students will learn something different, something relevant that is going to be needed for the unexpected future in which we are going to be living. Areas of knowledge such as integrity, flexibility, empathy, creativity, tolerance, awareness of what happens in the world are going to be crucial for the future. And on that way, we can make the case that international education is a key component of that. I believe that this crisis is giving us first a wake-up call, and secondly, is giving us a great opportunity to make the case with decision makers and with stakeholders in and outside of our higher education institutions that universities should prepare global citizens which are both competitive but also committed to a better world and to better well-being of their communities. And if we connect internationalization to that agenda, then international higher education becomes central component of the work of our higher education institutions. The world is different. The world will be completely different in the future. Nobody can predict how it will be, But of course, all of us can assure that it's going to be a new normal, which is not back to business as usual. We used to say that internationalization was a good idea. Now we need to make the case that it's a critical need, that is too close to home, that is essential for a better education, and that it is a priority, not for tomorrow, not even for today, but that probably was a priority for yesterday. I just will invite you to think that this is, of course, a time of a very difficult situations. But please remind what that poet mentioned years ago, that when the night is darker, is because this sunrise is going to be arriving soon. Paul Valéry said years ago that what it concerns us about today's world is that the future no longer is what it used to be. Let's take this as an opportunity to reinvent, to reimagine a better, more effective, more flexible, and more internationalized education. Please keep safe, healthy, and positive.